Viewers, welcome back to Rise and Shine. This morning we are chatting with Mr. Martin George, attorney at law, on two topics, both Ian Alleyne's arrest and that of the TRH maternal death reports. Good morning and welcome to you, Mr. George.
Hi, good morning to you, Ria. Good morning, Eddie, and good morning to your viewers, and good morning, Tobago. It's always beautiful to be in Tobago. It's always very positive and uplifting whenever we get to chat about issues concerning Tobago.
Good. I'm glad that you said that. The first thing on the table here, Mr. George, is the issue of Ian Alleyne's arrest. We want to get your thoughts very quickly on the initial arrest, the situation surrounding Mr. Alleyne's arrest, and then we'll get to the issue here of police brutality versus police duty.
Okay. The thing is, I'll just say this, Ria. I've been wondering why this actually is news at all, apart from the fact that it would probably help to boost ratings and television shows, because quite frankly this is the type of thing that occurs almost on a daily basis for ordinary citizens. Right. And I've been speaking out about it. I've been speaking out sometimes about the way police approach their duties in relation to ordinary citizens. It doesn't make, front page news when it happens to the ordinary citizen, but because of the circumstances of this one, I guess it gives us an opportunity to highlight the circumstance. So I would certainly want to say that we should focus more on the bigger issue as it relates to how citizens generally are treated by police officers, what are their rights, duties, and what are the obligations of police officers in that regard, rather than focusing on two TV personalities, because that's all I could really describe them as. Now, in relation to the way this occurred, if it is that there was indeed the use of obscene language as appears to now be surfacing, then clearly you would have had a basis, I would imagine, for a police officer to take some type of action. However, we must bear in mind that because of the circumstances whereby these are two rivals who were formerly partners, it is something that I would have certainly recommended that Inspector Alexander not get personally involved in. Even if there was some breach, there were several other police officers around. You could have asked any one of them to intervene. But for you personally manhandling, someone and, jacking them up against a vehicle in allegedly the course of your duties, it doesn't matter. The point is, remember, in law, they always say it's not just that justice must be done, but justice must appear to be done. It must be seen to be done. So, in other words, you, because of the personal scenario and the personal interest you may have in a matter, you ought not to have been the one to be the arresting officer also. That's just my humble view. Additionally, I have expressed concerns to the commissioner, and this is both in my capacity as an attorney and as a member of the Police Service Commission, about what I have seen in terms of the dispensing of quote-unquote legal advice, or advice which has legal implications, by the inspector on the television show that he carries out. Now, the thing is, it's one thing for Mr. Alleyne to do so on his program, because he is not an official representative of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. But when Inspector Alexander, as an official representative, because that's the capacity he's there as an official representative of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you see him discussing freely on matters, sometimes issues which are before the court, things which are pending, or
which should not happen.
This is my point. My point is, I don't think it's proper, first of all, as a matter of propriety and procedure, and secondly, I have listened with alarm at some of the legal conclusions he draws on television, and he does so freely and happily. Of course, I guess doing the best that he can with his legal knowledge and training. But the point is, when he's saying so as an official representative of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, that's where it causes concern. In other words, either they should have one of their official attorneys come on the set and probably deal with those aspects, or maybe let him get the advice from them beforehand, so he can always say, having spoken to the official attorney for the police service, this is the position. But I guess the exuberance and the enthusiasm of the heat of the moment, you know, he freely dives in and pronounces on things, and I think sooner or later it's going to come back and bite the police service. It is going to do so.
Okay. Mr. George, some questions were asked last week after this incident about the legality of Ms. Alexander's program in terms of it's a public, as you said, an official program by the police service. But where was it originated? Who sanctioned it? How it came to the public domain in the first place? Whether transparency, whether it went through to do the right process to be here. Can you say anything about
From what I understand, initially it was something that the Police Social and Welfare Service had an interest in. And then I think officially the police service has adopted it as an official program that they are participating in. So I think it has the official sanction. But the thing is, while it has good PR value in some instances, and we have to, I always try to look at the positives, you know, it has good PR value in some instances. I think there needs to be some sort of little more control or regulation in terms of the content and delivery of what is said on the program, so that it doesn't box in or ring fence the police service by statements made by Inspector Alexander as their official representative.
But as a member of the Police Service Commission, do you think that, or did you have any input in the choice of employer for, when I say employer, I mean the station to put this information to the public?
We had no input whatsoever.
Was there a tender?
We had no input whatsoever.
The police service has this program and they want stations to tender for it, or was it given to just one television
As Police Service Commission, we had no input whatsoever. In fact, we raised questions with the Commissioner about the program because we had concerns.
Do you believe that the commission should have been consulted?
This is not necessarily something that you have to consult us on, honestly, because the point is, remember, our job is really, we are overall policy and, you know, perspectives kind of thing. So the nitty-gritty of how you run your service, you don't have to consult us. But the point is, if things arise, say for instance when there was a total day of policing, which have such a tremendous impact upon the public, then of course we have the right to call you in and question you. And I can assure the public, as a commission, we have raised questions with the Commissioner about that program.
Okay.
We want to, just before we move to other areas of this particular case, police brutality versus police duty. Did Inspector Alexander carry out, were his actions all part and parcel of police duty, or was it police brutality against Mr. Alleyne?
Well, first of all, I couldn't comment on it because I don't have all the facts. And secondly, I wouldn't comment on it because it's a matter that's before the court. So it wouldn't be proper for me to do so. But as I say, again, in general terms, we can speak. All right. And I used an example this morning, and it was quite interesting. We were speaking about the gang violence in schools on a sister program. And they were mentioning the fact that, look, you know, it appears to be something new and unique. And I said, no. Have we forgotten the international school shooting which occurred some years ago, where a young man took his father's weapon from home, drove down to the school. As he entered, he shot a guard. Then he went to the cafeteria. He fired off shots. Then he went upstairs, held students and teachers hostage. And there was a hostage situation where the police were called in. There was a shootout. The young man was killed. As a result of that, the police officers were then facing an inquiry as to whether they should be charged for using excessive force. Now, the point is, the reason why all of the facts are so familiar to me is because I defended the police officers in that matter. All right? Because the point is, you have a situation where a student is armed with a gun, other students are being held hostage, the police exchange gunfire, and then now they are facing the trauma of now being, you know, put before a court to determine whether they used excessive force. In those circumstances, clearly, it could not be excessive force, and they were eventually exonerated. But the point is, when you have situations where an unarmed suspect who is not resisting or who is not, creating any threat or danger to you, and then you see the police using the excess of unnecessary force and brutality, then clearly these are circumstances that cry out for some kind of action and some kind of justice. There is need for sensitivity training in terms of the police officers, because there will be circumstances where you have to use force, and great force, but not every situation requires that. You know, so you have to be able to distill within your brain, okay, does this require that level of force? And trust me, it's not only local. I mean, we've seen it so many times in America, right? The Tamir Rice shooting, okay? A 12-year-old boy, the police officer shot him. You know, there's so many other circumstances. You know, the Michael Brown, you know, there's so many things that occurred, you know, right? Trayvon Martin, you know, with, you know, all these things are scenarios which I think are avoidable if there's some kind of proper training and understanding and appreciation of the relative rules.
Okay. Okay. What about the crime scene, the securing of the crime scene? Some people say that it was a crime scene and Mr. Alleyne in this case had no right where he was. But if you view the video, maybe you might have seen other civilians within the precincts of the police investigation there. When do you distinguish a crime scene from other normal?
Well, I would imagine certainly it would have to be a scenario where there is active evidence gathering taking place. In other words, you must have a scene that is live, in the sense that, look, we are gathering evidence from this particular scene, either spent shells, broken bottles, you know, there's a body on the ground, that kind of thing. So therefore, in those circumstances, clearly, you use your caution tape or whatever, you band it around, and you then say, well, okay, look, please do not cross this line, that kind of thing. But to simply describe any and every scenario and say it's an active crime scene, I don't think that's the kind of thing that can withstand scrutiny, particularly if it is, as you say, there were other persons milling around. So what distinguishes me from all the other persons who were in and out of the place? So I think in that scenario, it's going to be a hard sell. This is just respectful.
Officers training, police officers training, I mean, are they trained to use blunt force? Are they trained to observe a situation and to determine, based on the facts before them, how to treat with an alleged perpetrator, maybe one for murder as opposed to one for jaywalking or disturbing the peace? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the training has changed over the years, I could tell you. Initially, it really was one level for all, brute force down the line. You know, that was basically the way it went. But over the years, we've seen a greater sophistication, first of all, in the understanding of members of the public, their access to knowledge, their appreciation of their rights, their constitutional rights. We've had several cases before the courts where persons have won matters against the police service for excessive force or for unfair treatment by police officers. So therefore, I think the public is much more aware now. So as a result, the police service has adapted, and in terms of their training methods and methodologies, they are trying to instill this greater, as I say, sensitivity in their officers. I'm not sure how much of it is getting through, but I know that they are trying in terms of getting the message across. That's also part of the greater public sensitivity that the police service is trying to achieve in terms of training its officers, in terms of when you go into a station, how they treat with you. Because sometimes you go in there as a victim and they make you feel as if, well, you are the perpetrator. Yes. You know, the questions they ask you and the harshness and the roughness and the, venom with which they almost attack you. You begin to wonder, well, whose side are you on, kind of thing. So I think it really is, I hope, a medium term rather than a long term plan to try and change that face and image of the police service in terms of how they treat with the public. Because the public, you are there to serve the public. You're not enemies with the public, so therefore you can't be coming down on members of the public in this manner and expect cooperation and assistance from them.
Quickly here, annoying language as opposed to obscene language. Mr. Alleyne's Mr. Alleyne was being charged with 1, resisting arrest, using annoying language and obstructing a police officer in his duties. Give us an idea here, if you can, of what may fall under the umbrella of annoying language. Inspector Alexander indicated that Mr. Alleyne had cursed him. Oh, you're cursing me? The persons out there who have viewed the video indicating, I didn't hear him use any obscene language, I didn't hear any curse words, but now we're hearing the charge is not that of obscene language, which might have indicated cursing, but rather annoying language. What falls under annoying language?
Well, in terms of annoying language, it really is a subjective test which is looked at objectively. I know that might sound like a bit of a conundrum, but the point is, it has to be subjective because it has to be what is annoying to you, the person who complains, who makes the complaint. All right, so you will have to say the words that were used, and you will have to say, well, look, this is what annoyed me. It was done in a public place, because that's important. You know, if somebody does it in a private setting, then you have no basis for making any complaints, right? And therefore, as a result, I have, brought this charge against the person. And I can tell you, it's not just the police can lay such a charge. Private citizens can lay such a charge also.
Of annoying language.
Yes, use of annoying language. All right. Now, in terms of obscene language, what the court generally goes with is basically the standardized, accepted words which are considered obscene, and the use of those, again, in public. Has to be in a public setting. If someone does so in a private setting to you, then it's not something that you are capable of complaining of.
Okay. In one of Mr. Alexander's shows, I think after the incident, he said words like he's not a talk show host. He's, accommodating a program. Is he, in legal opinion, the duties he do on that channel between 6 and 7 o'clock, is he considered a host, a talk show host?
Well, I guess technically it may be that Marlon Hopkinson is the host, and maybe he's just, a regular guest or a stand-in guest. So I mean, the point is, well, regardless of how you want to cut it, slice it, or dice it, the fact is, to the public, he is someone who is a talk show presenter, whether host or otherwise.
Right.
The point is, he's there regularly on the show. And as I say, there are many good aspects of it. So it's not something that I would, automatically say that you must discard or throw out. But I think it needs greater regulation, greater control, and keep it within the parameters of exactly what the police service wants to get out there, rather than have someone just, espouse his own personal views all the time.
I heard you talk a little while ago about the perception of the police service, and I mean, this is something that you've been trying to see some change come to. Could Inspector Alexander's actions during that whole ordeal, could it have set the police service back in terms of the perception of the police service to the public?
Well, I guess it would depend on how you look at it, because from the comments I have seen and heard, you're hearing persons on both sides of the divide. Some are praising him and saying, well, yes, he had to do what he had to do. There are some who are saying that, look, it was excess. But as I say, at this point, I wouldn't want to comment on the matter itself, because it may be the subject of proceedings. So I wouldn't say any more in terms of that. However, I would certainly say this. The police top brass needs to take charge of this situation for the future. In other words, use this as an opportunity to either have greater regulation for the program going forward. They could use it as a great opportunity to get out there and get their message to the public that, look, hey, we are trying to change the way we do things in terms of how we interact with members of the public. Great opportunity. I think they can use it. The point is, in every adversity, I always think, if you look at the flip side, there's some way you can find some opportunity or something positive to come out of it.
Okay, we're going to take a very quick break here. Viewers, when we come back, we will continue on the Ian Alleyne arrest story, but also we're going to switch gears in just a little while on the TRHA maternal death reports. Stay tuned. welcome back to Rise and Shine. We're still chatting this morning with Mr. Martin George, attorney at law. Now, Mr. George, as we continue on the discussion here on Ian Allen's arrest, the PCA has indicated that they're not going to be getting involved. Why is that?
Well, there are two things. Number one, the PCA is not properly constituted as we speak. They do not have a vice chairman. So that has to be rectified, first of all. And secondly, once there is a court matter, the PCA cannot get involved. Now, I think, honestly, we need to amend the legislation, because the thing is, many of the matters that the PCA ought to be investigating do end up as court matters. And once a court matter is initiated, the PCA has to back off under the current structure of the legislation. So therefore, that's the reason why they're not involved.
Okay.
Okay. Tell us something about the rights, duties, obligations of a police officer in carrying out his duty in carrying out an arrest. How do you approach a person? What do you say to the person, make him aware? And also the citizen to the police. How should the citizen react?
Well, our authorities are replete with cases where it is clear as to what you must inform someone of. Upon arrest, you must inform them of the fact that they do have rights to an attorney, that kind of thing, But the point is, it may be that you can simply answer that by saying, well, look, yes, you were clearly aware of your right because you did have your attorney present, you did get legal counsel, that kind of thing. So it has to be in circumstances where persons may not really be aware of those things. Your right to a telephone call, all these things are very clearly established within our law, and we have had several cases, a long line of cases and authorities which establish that there must be afforded to citizens these basic rights.
When does resisting arrest start? At what point?
Well, first of all, you need to be arrested, or someone needs to be attempting to arrest you, and then I guess once you then present any difficulty to that process, it may be, I guess, in either struggling or wriggling or moving away with your hands, that kind of thing. It's a very, very subjective thing, but the point is it has to be initiated by someone attempting to arrest you to start with.
Mr. George, just hear my concern with that. You're being held, a police officer walks up to you and says you're under arrest. In yours, simply asking a question, what no, can be deemed resisting arrest?
You see, as I say, it will always be subjective. In other words, the point is you could ask the question possibly without giving any resistance, or you as most people naturally would, you would say, well, hey, what's this, please, and you may back away or pull away, and I think you would be entitled, if it is that you are not clear as to, well, what am I being arrested for, you would be entitled to ask a question.
But you should know before the handcuffs go on you that what you're being arrested for?
Well, I would think so, because I would think any normal person would ask, well, why are you doing this? Then, in other words, you as a human being would then want to question the legality of the arrest. So in other words, if the arrest itself is later deemed to be illegal,